Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. It is good to be alive in sunny Chattanooga, Tennessee. And to open the show, I'd like to talk about Paris, France a little bit. I know that that is not sports, and I don't think that anyone's going to have a problem with me just saying that. Obviously, there are things in life that are more important than sports. And to just think about the trauma and to think about the terror that must have been going on in people's minds on Friday night when all of the bombings in Paris were occurring. It was highly coordinated, and it must have been terrifying. We here in Chattanooga can probably relate more so than other people because of what has happened recently here with the shootings here. And I think that honestly that we have moments like these happen, and you're trying not to be afraid, and you're trying not to worry about the world, but you can't help it. Our world is going in a direction it's not good. And I just want to have the people of Paris, France in our thoughts and prayers moving forward. This is Hot News Talk Radio. You can listen to us on hotnewstalkradio.com and on the TuneIn Radio app. You find us in the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. Search Hot News Talk Radio. Give us a follow. Press play. You can have Hot News Talk Radio wherever you go. A lot of things happen this weekend, and especially in the world of football, in the world of college football, where we have all the wreckage and the carnage that we do. And I'm opposed to, as per my usual stance, I'm opposed to expanding the playoff to 8 teams because I think we do lose some of the carnage. We shrink it. The time that we get to look at this and go, who's going to lose next? Who's going to upset the system next? We shrink that time because now you've got more 2-3 lost teams that may be alive coming down to the end if you expand the playoff to 8 teams. And I personally like what is happening here. I like the car crashes of Baylor loses to an Oklahoma. That turned the entire Big 12 on its head. It does. And not just the Big 12, but because one team may end up coming out of the Big 12 that eliminates a spot, or that opens up a spot for somebody else. Like, you're not going to have another year where you've got 2 Big 12 teams because Oklahoma is good again and they're ruining things for everybody. Like, TCU and Baylor were going to be the ones running this, and you would feel bad if TCU and Baylor somehow ended up both being one loss and one of those teams had to miss the playoff, which is last year. Both teams missed the playoffs because the Big 12 doesn't have a championship game. Not having a championship game punished both teams. You would be saddened if that happened again. But instead, now you've got 3 teams. There's a little bit more maneuvering going on in the Big 12. That's that kind of carnage, that kind of wreckage there is having waves throughout the entire world of college football. And the same thing's happening in the SEC, that you've got Alabama and you've got Florida, and they're both one-loss teams. And I think that if Florida makes it to the end without losing another game, and Alabama makes it without losing another game, and even if they play in the title game, the SEC title game, and one of those teams loses, you'd feel bad with one of those teams missing. And so you're looking around because, like, crazy stuff could happen. You could have multiple 2-loss teams, and then, like, where does that leave you? That really leaves you in an awkward spot where we don't know who is getting in. And I like that period of time starts basically around the time that the College Football Committee releases their first rankings. Around that time, things just start to get a little crazy. And if you expand it to 8 games, when they release the rankings, it's not going to be as fun. I promise. Like, you think it's going to be more fun. I don't think it's going to be as fun. I think that it's going to be very fun near the end of the season when you got 2-3 games left. I want what's happening now. I like what's happening now, where every single week I don't know what I'm going to be talking about on Monday. Every single week, I don't know what questions I'm going to have for Bill on Thursday. We do college football with Bill. Bill Bender of Sporting News, the national college football writer, joins us every Thursday, and I just lob questions at him, and he knocks them out of the park. That I don't know what I'm going to ask him every Thursday because things get so crazy on the weekend, and you expand the playoff. I don't think that we end up with more fun. I think the playoff itself could be more fun. So I understand that argument. Like if you expand it to 8 teams, then obviously the playoff itself is more fun. But like we were so enamored with the playoff last year that we didn't realize that like most of those playoff games weren't good. They were so lopsided. Ohio State pummels Oregon in the national title game. And I mean, that wasn't a good game. It just wasn't a good game, and like you've got the game before that where Oregon plays Florida State and Jameis Winston looks terrible and they pummel Florida State, like just absolutely drub them. And that is something that you look at and go, like, if you look at these actual games, if you saw that happen in the NFL playoffs, you would say that was a terrible postseason. But you don't say that about college football because we've never had a playoff before. So that there's a novelty there. There's something there that we're like, oh, yeah, no, this is fun. We like this. But it's really not that great. Like, expanding it to 8 teams doesn't make it greater. It just gives you more games, and so a higher probability of better games. And maybe because you're expanding it to more teams, a higher probability of choosing the right team to be the national champion. Maybe. Because I don't think we were doing a bad job of it when it was just you pick number 1 and number 2. I thought that some of those games were really great games, really great national title games. And I don't feel like most of those years we didn't choose the right person to be the national champion. I feel like the right team won the national title every year before. I don't think the playoff makes it more likely that we'll choose the right person. It just gives us more games, that's what we want. And I'm not arguing to go back to the way it was. I like the playoff. I'm saying don't expand the playoff. It's good the way it is. It's perfect. There's the right amount of regular season ramifications to the point where, because like, if you look at the NFL has got a postseason that is obviously bigger than what we've got going on in college football. And so like the point where you start to care about NFL teams gets closer to the end of the season, because those games that are elimination games, those games in which people are definitively missing the playoffs or making the playoffs, happen a little bit later on. It just happens that way. If you expand the college football playoff, then you shift the time in which we don't know what's going on closer to the end of the season. And the fun in all of this is the ambiguity. To be clear, the fun in all of this is the ambiguity, that we don't know what's happening. So why would we want less of that? Like, I like the playoffs, okay? I like a postseason. I'm personally a fan of single elimination playoffs. I know that they're not the most scientific way to determine who's the best, but there's so much drama there and it's fun. I like that. But I would take more of regular season drama where a team can lose this week and they're not necessarily eliminated, and you're looking at other teams and maybe you're rooting against other teams because your team's still alive technically. Like, I don't want less of that. And I think you add more teams, you cut that down, there is less of that. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm talking college football. Arkansas and LSU happened, and Mr. Judd, I'm sure, is over the moon because he took his Hogs, even though there was no logical reason to take them. The man is biased. He just picks against Tennessee and Texas and Oklahoma, and he'll choose Arkansas. And it doesn't matter when he chooses them. Okay, it's almost never right, except this week it was right. He hit all 3. Texas loses to West Virginia, but they're not important at all. He just does that to spite me. Tennessee beats North Texas, but not by as much as Tennessee ought to have beaten North Texas. They should have beaten North Texas by a whole lot more. That's all I'm saying. They should have beaten North Texas by a whole heck of a lot more than what they actually did. And Arkansas beats LSU. And that was a surprise to me, but maybe it shouldn't have been. But LSU's got a good defense. So I was a little, and not just a good defense, a good run defense too. And what is Arkansas under Brett Bielema known for? Running the ball. And what did they do against LSU? They ran the ball. They ran it effectively. In fact, they were very good at running the football, like much better than I thought they would be. And they more or less held Leonard Fournette in check. Leonard Fournette did not stomp all over that whole team. He had a good day, had a touchdown, 91 yards, but he wasn't the dominant force that he had been against everybody else except Alabama. And LSU hasn't looked right since the second half of that game against Alabama. They were ineffective in the second half of that game, and they haven't looked the same. Even in their win the week before this week, they looked average. They haven't looked the same. And it's weird to me that they haven't looked the same, but Arkansas did what Arkansas does. They have three guys running for 1,000,000 yards and scoring a bunch of touchdowns. And it could have been any of the three guys scoring touchdowns or running for a bunch of yards. They all combined for almost 200 yards of offense. Arkansas is beastly running the football. You have to contain that. Brandon Harris, as the LSU quarterback, didn't do, I don't think, a good enough job really taking the game off of Leonard Fournette's shoulders. And as you can see, the result was that LSU lost, and they're basically out of the playoff now. I mean, barring some really, really fluky things where you've got a lot of other two-loss teams showing up, they're kind of out of it now. Which is unfortunate, because I think that they're a team that they win out from here on out. They pretty much could have made it in. I mean, Alabama and LSU could have made it in, and you might have, though it's unlikely, two SEC teams in the playoff. If Notre Dame continues holding serve, it's hard to say that that's what would be the case. Notre Dame not being conferenced at all is ruining it for everyone. And they continue to make life difficult, not just for the college football playoff committee, but for the rest of us, because we're trying to figure out who's going to make it in. I feel like we don't know. I think we can pretty much assume, though it's not necessarily fair to, but we can pretty much assume the Pac-12 has all but eliminated themselves from this playoff. There's no Pac-12 teams in there. Oregon isn't good enough to make it. They beat Stanford, and now Stanford is now saddled with this loss that they can't do anything with. They're now a two-loss team. It's hard to argue Stanford in. Okay, if anyone in the Pac-12, then probably them. And by the way, if you listen to Mr. Judd and I on Thursday as we went down our picks and you bet anything that we said, I'm so sorry. I apologize, because it's not good what happened there. We picked a lot of wrong things. That's on the Facebook page. And when we put our picks up every week, make sure that you log in to Facebook. You find Hot News Talk Radio and you put your picks in the comment section. I like to hear from you. And as soon as the alert comes up on my phone, I've gotten to talk to a couple of you, but more of you should come in, join in on these picks. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So we're looking at the Pac-12. They've basically eliminated themselves. Utah lost to Arizona. Stanford lost to Oregon. Those are the only two teams that really had a chance. UCLA lost to Washington State, and they were ranked 19th. Everybody in the Pac-12 is done. That's 2 or 3 losses for most of them. They're finished. There's nobody from that conference going to the playoff, which maybe that's why you expand it to eight teams. And even then, that seems like a money reason to me, that you expand it to 8 so that every conference has a better shot of being represented. I kind of like that. One of your conferences could be shut out. Okay, I'm a Big 12 guy. I'm a Longhorn fan. I'm a Big 12 guy. I'm a fan of Big 12 football. Big 12 got locked out last year, and I was okay with it. None of those teams deserve to be in there. TCU and Baylor didn't play anybody all year. Their strength of schedule is low, and they didn't play each other in a title game because they don't have one in the Big 12. So you get eliminated. That's just how it works. I'm fine with that. The Pac-12's gone. Let it be gone. We don't need to expand it to 8 teams so that everybody gets a chance to be included. You want to be included, win your games. That's all you got to do. It just happens that way. The best teams ought to get in. You don't need everybody showing up. You just don't. Maybe I'm going to give a counter to that coming up next. Also, I'd like to talk about LSU. An LSU player had an amazing game, and I'm not talking about football. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. Fox News Talk 1240.
I love my Flex loan from Advance Financial. I needed cash, I needed it fast, and I didn't want to get a payday loan. My Flex loan from Advance Financial is not a payday loan. It's a line of credit. I only pay for the cash I need, and I only pay for the time that I need it. There's no lump sum payment. My Advance Financial Flex loan is an open line of credit, and I can get cash anytime I need it.
Visit one of our 24/7 locations and get the cash you need today. Advance Financial. Welcome.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, y'all!
Hello, I'm Sheriff Jim Hammond with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. Everyone knows training is important, especially when it comes to training our local law enforcement. Effective training helps keep our officers proficient and able to respond to a multitude of events to keep the citizens of Hamilton County safe. In order to support our local law enforcement and make sure that they have the tools necessary to train and do their job, the Aegis Foundation of Greater Chattanooga is actively trying to raise $70,000 in our community to purchase a state-of-the-art visual firearms training simulator. The training lab is an interactive firearms simulation system that will help local law enforcement consistently train for a variety of life-threatening situations that they face each and every day. Training tools like this are not cheap. If you or your company would like to donate and help support the Aegis Foundation's goal to purchase one of these machines, please contact 423-886-1850. Once again, please contact 423-886-1850.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
President Obama makes Jimmy Carter look like Napoleon Bonaparte. We have a president that leads from behind, and when America doesn't lead, bad things happen.
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. Fox News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week is former Congressman from Ohio, Dennis Kucinich, who says a Department of Defense is not enough. The United States needs a Department of Peace, which is committed to avoiding wars. Is Kucinich onto something? Find out this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Expect partly sunny and a little warmer weather out there through the afternoon. Highs lower 60s. Tonight, some clouds, much milder, lows near 50. For Tuesday, some clouds, but still mainly dry. Highs back into the upper 60s with areas of rain and thunder showers rolling in later Wednesday. Some of that rain locally heavy. Quality, knowledge, skill, and value. That's Napa know-how. With more than 400,000 quality parts and 85 years of experience, they've got the know-how to find the right parts you need at Napa. And I'm Sourcine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. Fox News Talk 1240.
This is Clutch with Keon Rose, and boy, the Saints defense is absolutely terrible. I'm not going to talk too much about it. Just a little bit, because the Redskins beat them yesterday. And those are my guys. I just have to talk about it for a little bit because I'm very happy. Anytime, look, this is what it's like to be a Redskins fan. or a Browns fan or a Raiders fan. There's just like a group of fans that like we all understand what it's like to be the same thing, which is that you expect your team to disappoint you, and when they don't disappoint you, there's nothing else that you can feel but happiness and joy because you fully expect a disappointment. I thought they were going to lose to the Saints, and I know that the Saints are bad at defense. So are the Redskins. Really bad. Like, that secondary is terrible. Everyone in it is injured. But the Saints looked lost yesterday, like absolutely confused. The Redskins did just like one thing, like they ran at them and then hit some really big pass plays over the top of the Saints defense, which is terrible. Because like here's the thing, like the pass plays over the top of the Saints defense, those are the longest touchdowns that the Redskins have had this whole season. Kirk Cousins had not completed a touchdown pass greater than 7 yards the whole season for Washington. And yet somehow they're 4-5. Who knew? Who knew? You know what I'm saying?
You like that? You like that?
That I do like that. Kirk Cousins, I do like that. I like that a lot. I'm a huge fan of that. What I am also a huge fan of is apparently NFC West football, because it is those teams get after each other in a way that I haven't seen anybody do all season. The Cardinals and the Seahawks played each other last night, and they were out for blood. That game looked scary. Like, they were hitting each other, and they're so hard. And the Seahawks and the Cardinals are probably some of the bigger defenses in the league in terms of, like, just physical size. Probably Carolina's up there as well. And, like, they're not about playing fast and free. They're about hitting you and brutalizing you. But the plays that the offense has made to counter that was absolutely spectacular. The Larry Fitzgerald had a monster night. Carson Palmer looked brilliant. The Seahawks like hung in the game. They fell behind early. They hung in there, and that's some fun football. NFC West football. Like, those teams are just like going after each other, and like it's fun to watch because just like offensively and defensively, there's just so much talent on all of those teams that you're just like, wow. And the familiarity with each other makes those games crazy to watch. Crazy. And the Cardinals win it, and Carson Palmer looks, again, amazing. The Cardinals with Carson Palmer, ever since he's been there, it's been hard to really quantify what he means to that team outside of just wins. Like, that whole offense looks more smooth when he's there than when he's not there, than when he got injured last season. I mean, it's night and day. And it's so obvious that Larry Fitzgerald is just able to dominate now more so than ever, that he's there, that Carson has arrived and brought some kind of quarterbacking talent to that team, because you have to have it. You have to have it. It's not optional in the NFL. You've got to have quarterbacking talent. And Carson Palmer, I'm really glad that he's able to revive his career. It looked like it was over multiple times on both of the knee injuries. You're just like, man, maybe this guy should just stop, because you always feel bad for a guy like that. You do. And fortunately, that was not the case. He's done a great job since he's been back, and he's Chris Collinsworth was saying last night he's an MVP candidate, and I'm going to agree with Collinsworth. Carson Palmer is an MVP candidate. He's right up there with Dalton and Brady. I mean, I don't know. Is there any other quarterback consistently playing at that level right now? I would have said Rodgers 3 weeks ago, but they've now lost 3 weeks in a row. So I can't say Rodgers, that he looks unsettled and disturbed, and he's being chased everywhere. And that offensive line, which was, I mean, to be fair, non-existent the whole season, suddenly appears to be a problem for him. And he can jump back into the MVP conversation. He's just fallen back in my mind for now. But enough NFL. I want to talk Heisman talk, okay? Because we're getting to that time of year where the best player in college football, we've got to figure out who that is. And I ask Bill every week because, like, I don't I don't know all of the top performances every week, and you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at the stats and trying to see, like, okay, who deserves to win this thing? And for like 6 weeks, the answer to that question was Leonard Fournette, and it was not close. Like, it wasn't close for 6 whole weeks. And then the game against Alabama happens for LSU. Fournette gets shut down. And you got to start talking about Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott has not strayed at all. He looks impressive. Now, it's interesting because it's not like Ohio State's played anybody. That's my big criticism of Ezekiel Elliott. He's got to put the team on his back in some big games. And fortunately for him, he's going to have the opportunity to prove it because there are some big games coming up for Ohio State. They haven't beaten anybody, in my opinion, really yet. Virginia Tech is probably the team that they beat, that at the time that they beat them, you expected them to beat that, or to play against a tough opponent. Like, Virginia Tech was actually considered a tough opponent at that time. They haven't had another game like that since. Since then, they've played Hawaii, Northern Illinois, Western Michigan, Indiana, Maryland, Penn State, Rutgers, Minnesota, and last week, Illinois. Saturday, Illinois. I mean, it's just, there's been nobody on this schedule. Nobody on this schedule, right? But the games that they have coming up, Michigan State, huge game. Rivalry game. Michigan, huge game. Rivalry game. And Michigan State's ranked 13th. Michigan's ranked 14th. So again, and in the conference title game, should they run the gauntlet and beat those two teams, they're going to probably be running into undefeated Iowa. If Ezekiel Elliott puts on a show in those 3 games, the Heisman's his to lose. I mean, it already is, but those are the games that's going to lock it up for him. Those are going to lock it up for him. And he's now the front runner in this thing. Okay, it's hard to make an argument for anybody else. It's hard to make an argument for Fournette now that the team is losing and he's not looking as dominant. Don't get me wrong. He's still dominant. Okay, he had 91 yards and a touchdown. This is pedestrian for him. This is not pedestrian. Okay, I mean, 91 yards and a touchdown is impressive for anybody. It's just for Leonard Fournette, we've come to expect so much from him it's kind of disappointing. Just a little bit. You know what I mean? If you look at the SEC, you've got to look at Derrick Henry in Alabama as a guy that is in the Heisman conversation as well. I think he's not getting nearly as much credit because, of course, Alabama and their big old offensive line and just all the talent that they have on that team, that they're so big and strong. And honestly, Alabama running backs come off as a monolith. And this is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Simply search Hot News Talk Radio. We are the first thing that comes up. Thank you for joining me today. We're talking about Heisman candidates. I'm talking about Derrick Henry right now. Just talked about Leonard Fournette kind of falling off to the wayside there in that conversation. I think he probably gets invited to New York still. He's just not the front runner now. It's obviously Ezekiel Elliott. And if Elliott is able to put up the kinds of numbers that he's putting up now against the next 3 teams that he's likely to play, which is Michigan State, and Iowa, which is undefeated right now. If he has a big performance against those 3 schools, you know what? It's hard to say that he doesn't deserve to win the Heisman. It's difficult to say that. I wouldn't be able to argue that with you. Derrick Henry, in my opinion, is if Ezekiel Elliott is 1, Derrick Henry's 1A. He has been so consistent, even in the loss that Alabama had to Ole Miss. I mean, so consistent and so very good that it's hard to argue against him. In my opinion, it's hard. And the schedule for Alabama, a little bit tougher, which is why, even though I think Ezekiel Elliott is the front runner, like, there's no way that you can look at the teams that Alabama has faced and say that Derrick Henry hasn't had to do it against better opponents, because he has. They played Wisconsin, which at the time was considered a bigger opponent until Alabama stopped them. Middle Tennessee, Ole Miss, Louisiana Monroe, but against Georgia, he had a great game. Against A&M, Texas A&M, he had a great game. Against the Tennessee, he had a great game in a game where Tennessee played defensively, probably one of their finer performances. Probably one of the best volunteer performances as a defensive unit, and Derrick Henry still got off. It's hard to stop this guy. Then, of course, the game against LSU and against Mississippi State this past Saturday, Derrick Henry, once again, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 9.3 yards a carry. He's unbelievable. He's ridiculous. Derrick Henry is ridiculous. Like, his stats for the season, he's averaging 6 yards a carry. He's got 19 touchdowns. He's on pace. Okay, he's already about to be at 1,500 yards. That's ridiculous. Like, he's carrying the offense. Everything that they do in their passing game comes off of Derrick Henry. And he runs with such vision and such anticipation. He knows where the holes are going to open up. He knows where his blockers are going to be. And like with Leonard Fournette has those tools too, but they're not as refined as Derrick Henry, because Leonard Fournette, for a lot of his runs, simply just out-athletes you. The Leonard Fournette just is bigger, stronger, faster, and is just shrugging guys off. That takes skill too. Like, being big, strong, and fast is a skill. I'm not taking away from Leonard Fournette, but I'm saying what Derrick Henry is doing is so much more polished than what Leonard Fournette was doing, that, to me, that makes that a more impressive accomplishment. Not that Derrick Henry's not out-athleting people too. But Leonard Fournette is a freak. Like, he's on another, physically, he's just on another level. Like, you see guys with that level of athleticism at that size. That's Leonard Fournette. That's Adrian Peterson. That's Cam Newton. Like, there's not a whole lot of guys that big moving at that speed. That's like LeBron James. Literally, he's just huge. How is he so fast? Like, it doesn't physically look like it ought to be possible. Like, that just looks so weird and bizarre just to see a guy like, you're carrying like 250, 260 pounds on you right now. How are you almost running 20 miles an hour? Like, how are you nearly running a 4.5 40? That, to me, is insanity. It's actual madness. That's part of what makes it fun to watch, is that these guys are doing something that is physically almost not near possible. This is Keon Rose, Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. In a little bit, we're going to talk about Peyton Manning, which to me is a sad conversation to have. It's the sad conversation that we've been having on and off all season long, because he looks good some games that you're like, wow, okay, this is the Peyton that we know. He's getting older. His body's breaking down, and that's fine. He can still beat you with his mind. Peyton Manning's a chess master, and he's out there playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Well, you know what? Peyton Manning has suffered a few injuries this season, some that he's talked about, some that he hasn't talked about. And he looked dreadful yesterday. He breaks Brett Favre's passing yards record, but he throws 4 interceptions. He has to get benched. As we learned today, he tore his plantar fascia in his foot. It's a partial tear, which is apparently more painful than a full tear. Like, one way to remedy the pain is to just create a full tear in the ligament, because partially torn, it is excruciatingly painful. I've never had that kind of injury. I do have, soreness and tightness in my feet sometimes, but that's nothing compared to a torn plantar fascia. You can't play with that. You can't throw a football with that, because it's a full body motion that starts in your feet. And so there's Peyton Manning playing with one foot. So now you've taken the chess master and all of his moves, and you've reduced his moves You've taken away his queen and you've taken away his bishop. And that's how he started. It's hard to win that way. We'll talk about that a lot more. Talk legacy talk here on Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Social media, we're on that. Hot News Talk Radio on Facebook, at Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter. Download the TuneIn app and follow us anywhere at any time. AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
So the game time of the Iron Bowl, Auburn and Alabama, has been announced. Finally, it's going to be 2:30. Or check that, it's going to be 3:30 on CBS. I was looking it up and they put it in Central Time for whatever reason. They never list games in Central Time. What on earth is that? And this is 24/7 Sports. I trust them. That's weird to me. 3:30 Eastern Standard Time is the time of the Iron Bowl, with Auburn really looking to play spoiler here. They haven't had a great season. They've been largely disappointing because of the potential that they had and the things that we expected from them early on, and then they just kind of fell by the wayside. And we've gone through a couple of quarterbacks with them. We started with Jeremy Johnson, and then we just had to move on from him. We've gone on to Sean White, and it's complicated with Auburn, and I don't know what's necessarily happened to them, but they lost to Georgia this past week, and they're fighting right now for bowl eligibility. That's what it is. Right now they're fighting for bowl eligibility. So, but that's 2 weeks from now is the Iron Bowl. But I like the Iron Bowl, and I like the little rivalries that are so big that they're their own title games. There's a bragging rights there, and who's the best school in Alabama? That's what we're going to determine. It's Alabama, by the way. I'm kidding, but like, you get an opportunity to ruin your opponent's life. There's the German word that is one of my favorite words in all of language. It's called Schadenfreude, and it's a word that obviously only Germans would have. It's the joy that you get in watching somebody else's pain. That is the word for that. And when other people lose, you feel kind of good. The Redskins won yesterday. The Cowboys lost. The Eagles lost. The Giants lost. I feel pretty good. Not just from my own victory, but from the Schadenfreude I feel from everybody else. Like, I really, the Patriots fluked their way into a win against the Giants yesterday. And thank you, New England. Again, they crushed us, but they also crushed the Giants. And I'll take it. I'll take it. You have no idea. But I wanted to talk about Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning there's a reason why people follow the Broncos here in Tennessee, and that's Peyton Manning. It's like he's the native son. And the thing about Peyton Manning is he's built such a legacy. Like, he is such an icon. And the thing that makes it interesting to me, that makes Peyton such an icon, is how long he's been dominant. How long and how totally he's been dominant. That sure, he doesn't have the postseason success. He doesn't have the championships. Contrary to popular belief, and this is my own personal opinion, sports are not just about championships. Were there perfectly great players that just never got the opportunity to have a championship? And I will give you that in individual sports. I think in golf, it is about how many majors you've won. In tennis, it is about how many majors you've won. Those are individual sports. I don't think that you can be necessarily considered one of the best to ever do it and have done it and playing in a sport that's an individual sport and having not at least competed for a championship. And Peyton plays in a team sport. So I don't put that all on him. The quarterback is the most important position. When he doesn't play well, the whole system falls apart. I get that. Okay, that when a quarterback loses, he does take the blame. When a team wins, the quarterback does get the credit. Peyton, though, to me, best quarterback. You could argue best quarterback ever because he owns the NFL record book as a passer. He completely owns the NFL record book. And to watch where he is now from the guy that owned the record book, the guy that has his name next to every significant passing statistic in NFL history, the difference between that guy and the guy that we've been seeing over the last season and a half, there's a huge difference because Peyton Manning has always been the kind of quarterback that he's not going to beat you with his legs. He's going to beat you with his mind, and he's going to beat you with his arm. And Peyton right now looks terrible. He looks awful, and he tore the plantar fascia in his foot, which is a very important ligament to just stability. He's tore that ligament in his foot, and it's obviously impacting the way that he's played. That, along with the ribs that have hurt him for a couple of weeks now, and along with the shoulder injury that has been lingering for him a little bit now. But he's got up and down weeks. Like one week he'll look good, the next week he'll look bad. And, last week they lost, but the week before they won, and the week before that was a bye week. So he had opportunity to rest. When Peyton gets to rest, apparently he looks better. The issue with Peyton is that I think we get into this hero worship mode in sports, and we want, it's an empathy thing. Like, we want what's best for the person who we think is a hero of ours. And Peyton Manning has been, for the longest time, one of my favorite players ever. And so, you see him struggling, and you're like, dude, just stop. Just stop. And that's a selfish thing to think. I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to call everyone out. That's a selfish thing to think. You're not telling him to stop because of how bad he looks. You're not telling him to stop for him. You want to remember a world in which Peyton Manning looked superhuman, and with every game that he runs out there and looks average to way below average, he doesn't remind you of the superhuman that you once admired. It's hard to watch because you knew when he was better than this. Okay, there are quarterbacks that are inconsistent that aren't Peyton Manning. You don't tell them to stop. You want them to stop because they're making whatever team they're on lose. Okay, it's an up and down thing. But with Peyton, he had such a track record of consistency and of greatness. His preparation is legendary. His ability to control things is legendary. His desire to control everything is legendary. And all of those things are admirable to a certain degree, especially the preparation. Like my dad, I used to watch football with my dad, and my dad would always point to Peyton Manning as a guy who prepared. That the lessons that I learned about preparing for things, I would rather be over-prepared than under-prepared. I'd rather over-prepare for this show than under-prepare for this show. Walk away with more material than I need than with not enough material. I learned that because my dad pointed that out as a thing that Peyton Manning always did. He was prepared. He knew what your defense was going to do before your defense did it because he watched the film and he knew. I learned that lesson That's something that's admirable. But we're starting to see that there's a point in your life, you reach a certain age, all the preparation in the world can't help you. And it's disappointing and it's depressing, but that's just life. That's just life. And we don't like to see it. So we'd like to tell Peyton Manning, stop doing the thing that we don't like to see. If football makes Peyton Manning happy, he should play it. He's not going to get this chance to play it ever again. And me not wanting to watch Peyton Manning as he looks like much less than a hero shouldn't play any bearing on that. Like people said that about Michael Jordan. When he came back with the Wizards, Michael Jordan looked terrible because Michael Jordan looked old because he was old. That's just Father Time acting on him as it will on me and every one of us. And we see it and we don't like it and we want to turn away. But instead of turning away, we tell that person to just go away. But you know what? Michael Jordan playing basketball at 40, he's never going to get the chance to play it at 50. Nobody plays at 50. If he wanted to play it as a 40-year-old man, it wasn't going to look great, but he was physically capable of doing it. And it's something that he loves doing. It's part of his identity. And you've got to let him do that. You can't say, stop doing this thing because I don't like the way it looks. And if you stop putting Michael Jordan, Peyton Manning, and everyone else up on a giant pedestal, it would be okay for them to come back and stink. Look, it's not going to get any easier to watch. Okay? But I still enjoy watching Peyton Manning where he is now, not looking right. Now, I don't want him to further injure himself. If that's going to lead to further injury, like Peyton Manning down the road, just don't do that. Then I'm concerned for you. Wes Welker trying to get back into the NFL after all the concussions that dude has had, he can't do that. He's good enough to play, but his brain will be scrambled eggs if he takes another concussion. And he plays as a wide receiver in the slot. So unfortunately, he can't do that. Sorry, like he just can't. He's a wide receiver in the slot. He's going to take a lot of hits. And some of them will be to his head. So he shouldn't come back and play anymore. Not because he didn't look like what he used to, but because he would physically, someone's got to stop Wes Welker if Wes Welker's not going to stop Wes Welker. But Peyton Manning's not in that position. His body's falling apart. And if you're going to play football for as long as you possibly can, this is how this looks like when you end. Which is unfortunate. But Peyton Manning's legacy is solidified. He's not detracting from his legacy by playing with the Broncos as his shoulder hurts and his ribs hurt and his foot feels bad. He's not tarnishing his legacy. Peyton Manning has already achieved all the great things that you could ever achieve in that sport. He's won a title. Sure, it's just one, but he's won a title. And he dominated in that game. It wasn't a great game. The Bears were awful. Rex Grossman was in the Super Bowl. That was weird. But Peyton Manning's done all the great things that he's going to need to do. Sure, would have been cool if he had won a national title for Tennessee, but so he owns the Tennessee record book too. The volunteer passing record book, until someone does something about it, belongs to Peyton Manning. The NFL passing record book, until someone does something about it. And Drew Brees is hanging around, and Brady might play long enough to do something about it. Peyton owns it. All of it. And no bad play from Peyton Manning from here until his career should end will ever change that for me or anyone who saw him play in his prime. If you watch Peyton in his prime, you're not going to forget those things because he's playing poorly. His legacy is set. That's the point of even having a legacy. Like a legacy is something that it can't be changed that easily. if it could, it wouldn't be worth the while of having one. I would like to build a legacy, but you know what? I mean, it's a matter of I can't build my own legacy. I need other people to like agree that the things that I've done have some weight and merit and importance. So you don't focus on it, but once you build it, it doesn't get taken away from you. It doesn't disappear. We talk about, and this is a little off the beaten path, but not really, a guy like Bill Cosby and all the good that he was able to do for America's perceptions about Black America, and even the things in his comedy that were so inspiring, that yes, the things that Bill Cosby did with regards to the accusations of rape towards him, those things are awful. But that doesn't erase Bill Cosby as a person who also did some good things. And who's also a great comedian. Like, to me, he's still one of the best comedians of all time. That doesn't go away. That's just a different part of your legacy. That's just a negative part of your legacy. In Peyton's case, Peyton's done all the positive football stuff a person can do. The amount of interceptions he would have to throw at this point to make his interception to touchdown ratio reachable by anyone else is too many to count. Thanks for listening today. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You've been listening to Clutch with Keon Rose, and I'll see you in 23 hours.
Expect partly sunny and a little warmer weather out there through the afternoon. Highs lower 60s. Tonight, some clouds, much milder lows near 50 for Tuesday.